We're back at Dallas Fest After Dark. Thank you very much for joining us. And coming up to the stage, we had to tear him away from 18 other different groups of people that wanted his time. We appreciate the time he's spending with us. It's Bill Paxton. Bill, thanks a lot for spending some time with us.
Thanks for having me.
You had a great time down at the red carpet, kicking off the festival, where you were basically the first person to intro the festival and get the festival kicked off.
That was quite an honor.
It was really cool.
It worked out well that way.
How many of these festivals have you been to at Dallas International?
Well, actually, I originally came down here in 2001 for the Deep Ellum Film Festival, and I premiered a movie I directed called FRAILTY, and it was great. The audience were great, the reception was great, and you don't have to twist my arm to come down to North Texas in the springtime. It's one of the most beautiful times of year. I grew up in this area, and so to come down and to show my film, and I had a great audience, and I got to know Michael Caine and a lot of the people involved who are now involved with the Dallas International Film Festival, and they had me back. I came down here for the first official one, I think was 2007, and I've been back. I guess this is my third time back for this festival, and it's a great festival. It celebrates new talent. It's a great venue and a showcase for all kinds of films that you wouldn't normally see. A lot of local talent. An old partner of mine, a very close colleague, Tom Huckabee, has a movie playing tomorrow night that he wrote and directed and was shot here with local actors. It's called Carried Away. It's going to screen tomorrow, and it's a good story. A good story people could relate to. So, it's great to come down here. People like to drink beer down here, and people are open, and they're positive, and they're I don't know, just in their energy. And so I enjoy it. Sorry, I'm doing all this talking.
No. It's funny, that film Carried Away.
We're on the internet, right?
Yeah, we're going on the internet.
Okay, then we're cool. We can just rap away.
That film Carried Away actually stars an actor by the name of Mark Walters, and my name's Mark Walters. And so when we met today, it was like a meeting of the two.
Yeah, he's a great actor.
Local guy, yeah.
Local guy. He's been doing Friday Night Lights.
Yeah.
And I thought he did a great job, and it's so funny because the script's kind of autobiographical about Tom's family, Huckabee's family, and I kind of knew all the characters that were based on, on the film, and I thought the guy really kind of captured Tom's old man, and it really kind of, he's one of those old school kind of hard guys, but but good guy, good father.
You brought up Frailty, which is honestly one of my favorite films. I think you did such an amazing job on that movie, and it's a film that I think has developed somewhat of a big afterlife as well. Like when it hit DVD, a lot of people really seemed to start to discover it that hadn't seen it before.
Yeah.
Was there ever any plan, or have you ever thought about the idea of revisiting The God's Hands Killer?
You mean a sequel or a prequel? You know what? You'd have to talk to Brent Hanley, who wrote Frailty as an original screenplay. He's from this area. He's from like the Grand Prairie area. He lives down in Austin now, and as a matter of fact, I'm collaborating with him again. He's adapting a Joe Lansdale book called The Bottoms, which is a serial killer story set back in East Texas in the early 30s, and it's got kind of a To Kill a Mockingbird kind of vibe to it, and he's adapting that from Joe's book right now, and we're in hopes of making that into a feature film.
I love seeing you bring these Texas guys into this. It's so great. Joe's a really terrific writer.
Great writer. I mean, if your constituents, whoever's listening out there,
Joe Lansdale,
one of the great writers of our country, and I love these regional writers, these guys who do stay on the turf that they came from, and they really get it right, and he's one of those guys. He's a great Texas writer. He's written a slew of books. They're all incredibly readable, and they're great, and I'm hoping we do more things with him.
I think that'd be great. Now, talking about possible sequels and whatnot, there was an internet rumor that came up not so long ago about Twister 2.
Yeah, I kind of helped start that.
You sort of helped start that.
Yeah.
Now, can we validate, is there any sort of movement on a Twister 2?
Is there any real traction, is what you're asking me?
Can we start a wild internet rumor right now?
I'd have to say right now that the freight train is sitting on the track, but It ain't moving.
But that film has such a great cult following. I think everybody would love to see.
I think what you need to do is you need to do a sequel where Helen and I are passing the torch to a daughter, or someone, somehow a younger group kind of take over the quest. I have a lot of ideas that I think are could be pretty great.
Yeah.
And I have talked to a few people who are involved with the original film, like Kathleen Kennedy, but right now there's not much movement on it. So it's actually what's holding it up is I think the idea that there are two studios that share the title, Warner Brothers and Universal. And I don't know right now if they're so keen on doing a co-production. And I think Steven Spielberg, he would have to get on board, and I would love to see Steven Spielberg direct the sequel.
So there's no beef between you and Jan de Bont, though?
Or Jan. I have no beef with Jan either. You know what? Actually, Jan, met me and cast me in that role, and Steven Spielberg approved me for the part, and Kathleen Kennedy, and I got to do a part that was kind of like a dream come true. I came from Tornado Alley, and I ended up getting to do this movie that was a real regional film that kind of celebrated, the myth and the legends of these incredible extreme storms that come across this part of the country every year. And I think Steven Spielberg, I would love to see. I guess the reason I saw Steven, I didn't mention Jan. Jan's a great filmmaker and a real hands-on guy, and I had a great experience with him. I guess when I thought of Steven Spielberg directing it, I've always seen that there could be a more of a Jaws version of Twister. Yeah. So it's got a little more
little danger,
sand in it.
Yeah.
It's a little more. The Twisters are something very gothic. You have to remember about tornadoes. They're almost like. They almost do have kind of an anthropomorphic kind of vibe about them. They're these rogue colossus that could kind of spring up, and they might kill everybody on that side of the street and not even harm a feather on this side.
We had that in your hometown of Fort Worth with the Twisters that came through 10 years ago, where it just decimated skyscrapers and stuff across the street.
Yeah,
was completely untouched.
It's so capricious in its nature, but it's so ferocious in its killing ability that it really becomes almost like a sociopathic thing that just has no in its nature. That's one way to kind of romanticize it, but there's something exciting about that. The great white of Jaws is a part of nature. It's this kind of the ultimate killing machine, if you want to have it, and that movie to this day, it has its fascination because there's something kind of it is a little dangerous. It's a little that opening scene of that movie still kills me this day.
Yeah,
kept me from swimming in the ocean at night too.
It still keeps my wife from going
especially
in the
if there's a buoy out there. Hey, I'm gonna swim to the buoy. What the fuck was that? Jesus Christ! Oh my God!
Tell me a little bit about the first movie that you were a part of, whether it was an extra, whatever.
First movie I was a part of.
Yeah.
What flashes in my mind when you say that? I was on a set. It was actually an industrial film when I was 18. And it was produced and directed by a guy named Milan Herzog. I think Milan is still living. He's in his 90s now. This is for Encyclopedia Britannica. We're shooting at a place on Pico Boulevard near Fairfax, and it was called Carthay Studios. It was just one sound stage. Jim Backus had an office upstairs. Clint Eastwood had an office upstairs. I never got to meet Clint Eastwood at that time, which I would have died, and because he was really kind of one of my biggest inspirations, and to this day is still, an actor who empowered himself, became a filmmaker, started making film stories he wanted to tell, and some he was in, some he wasn't in, and became just one of the great American directors, and so I would have loved to have met him. But Jim Backus, the voice of Mr. Magoo, Thurston Howell for I guess I should say Thurston Howell, for crying out loud. He came down to the set one day, and I remember getting to shake his hand, and that was kind of like, wow, that's Jim Backus.
What do you think it's going to take, other than getting the Texas legislature back in the business of giving?
That's it.
Is that the only thing that's going to keep? That's going to get.
I just shot a picture. I did a little part in a picture for Steven Soderbergh in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I have so many friends who work in Shreveport, Louisiana. But I got to tell you, both those states that really, and Texas, which represent this whole southwestern region, they're kicking this state's ass because they've created incentive where I don't know how many cents on the dollar that a producer gets, 25 cents on the dollar, whatever, but they have made it created enticement. And in the long run, that is such a smart thing to do because, look, movies bring in money, they bring in revenue, they bring in work, they create, it's a cash cow. It's almost like a movable feast. And I feel like Texas, and I think there's a great governor here, Rick Perry. He's very savvy, and I guess he just has to work with his legislature. And I know they've tried to make it more enticing. But until they're competing with those other two states, and I don't know what that number is, then that'll limit the take, and I'd like to see it become more competitive. So because this is a great place, you got not only you have urban areas, you've got incredible rural areas, you've got just about every set you could probably need, and you've got great artists and craftsmen down here. There's a lot of talent and resource here. So you have a pool. You've got a crew pool. So you got sound stages. Look, Hollywood doesn't have to be in Hollywood anymore.
Texas is a right-to-work state, which is why Oliver Stone made so many.
That's certainly an enticement. I'm a union guy, and always will be. But when you're breaking into a business, if there's not some kind of a non-union place where you can kind of learn your craft and get in, then I think, I worked for Roger Corman when I first went to Hollywood. That was the only non-union feature filmmaker, and I'm glad I had that opportunity because then eventually I did get to join the unions.
We got to wrap it up here with Bill Paxton, but the last question I want to ask you are probably one of the most quotable actors working in the business today. What is the number one quote people come up to you and say from one of your films? I know Game Over's in there, but what would you say is the number one quote you get?
Game over, man. I don't know. I guess it would have to be from Weird Science or True Lies. It's funny what people want to bust you for and stuff, but also people come up to me with lines from Apollo 13 and Aliens, True Lies. Aliens, the True Lies, Weird Science. What else? I can't think of it.
Back to Terminator. The
Terminator.
Cameo in there.
Terminator.
Yeah.
And even Frailty and certainly Titanic.
And what would be your personal favorite line that you've ever uttered?
What was my personal favorite?
You know what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to get you to say one here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, how about a nice greasy pork sandwich served in a dirty ashtray?
Bill Paxton, ladies and gentlemen. Bill Paxton.